I inherited everything from my ex-husband's mother after caring for her. Now he and his mistress are threatening me with a lawsuit. Hi everyone, I have a complicated situation and I'd like to hear your opinion. My name is Gigi. I'm 27 and I have a daughter, Naomi, who is 7. I was married to my ex-husband Jack, who is 30, for almost 8 years. At 2 months into my pregnancy with our second child, I found out Jack was cheating on me with his colleague, Susan. I discovered this by accident when I saw their messages on his phone. In tears, I demanded an explanation. Jack finally admitted that Susan was also pregnant by him. I was so shocked I almost fainted. Jack and I fought a lot. Despite everything, his mother still came to support me. I was so stressed that I ended up having a miscarriage. When Jack found out we lost the baby, he didn't stay with me to grieve or comfort me. Instead, he left for Susan and blamed me for the loss of our child. I was devastated and cried for many days. Luckily, my ex-mother-in-law stayed with me the whole time and helped take care of Naomi so I could get through the loss. The divorce from Jack was difficult. He refused to pay child support but was eventually forced by court order. Throughout the process, Jack made it clear he wanted nothing to do with me or Naomi. He completely gave up custody in my favor. I felt terribly sorry for my daughter, but there was nothing I could do. Jack only paid child support regularly and never once tried to visit or even ask about his daughter. Later I found out Susan had given birth to his son and they'd been together since. In this nightmare, my main supports were my parents and my ex-mother-in-law. The thing is, my parents and Jack's mother have been lifelong best friends. That's how I met Jack, through our families. Later, when Jack's mother found out about Jack's affair, she was furious with him and immediately supported me. They argued constantly over his relationship, and she eventually promised never to speak to him again. When she found out he left the family, she made it clear she wanted nothing to do with his new woman or their child. Strangely enough, she kept her word. She never spoke to Jack again, even when he begged to meet her and his son. Susan was very jealous that my ex-mother-in-law considered me and my daughter family but not her. When my ex-mother-in-law came to help me, Susan's relatives strongly judged her. Jack's father had died years ago, and the family tried to convince my ex-mother-in-law to forgive her son. They said Jack was her child, so she should forget and rebuild relations, especially with the grandson. But my ex-mother-in-law stood firm. When Susan gave birth, Jack's relatives started supporting him, knowing he cheated on me, and they never asked how I or Naomi were doing. It got so bad that they stopped inviting my ex-mother-in-law to family holidays just to include Jack and Susan, because she refused to go if they were there. I felt sorry for her being estranged from her family, but she comforted me, saying I was like a daughter to her and she didn't care if the family stopped talking to her. I am very grateful for her. Such support and love from a mother-in-law is rare. Over time, her condition worsened. She couldn't walk or care for herself. I offered for her to move in with us so I could care for her 24/7. We hired a caregiver to help in the mornings, and I looked after her in the evenings. I spent a lot of time with her and didn't mind. Naomi adored her grandmother and was happy we all lived together. Then my ex-mother-in-law confessed that when she learned Jack left me, she changed her will. Originally, Jack was to inherit everything as her only son. But after the affair came out, she rewrote the will. Now the house and her insurance payout would go to Naomi. She named me the heir to a significant portion of her money and a family heirloom, explaining it was a sign of respect and trust. She asked me to keep the heirloom safe and pass it on to Naomi one day so part of her would live on in our family. This was very touching to me. According to the will, Jack was to receive his father's car and his entire painting collection. The money for Naomi until she turns 18 would be held in a trust under my management. If anything happened to me, my parents would look after it. I was in complete shock and didn't know what to say. It was comforting that my ex-mother-in-law valued us and wanted to secure Naomi's future. I repeatedly asked her to reconsider including Susan and their child in the will. I told her I held no grudges since Susan was now Jack's wife, but she firmly stood by her decision, repeating that in her view, Jack's true wife was me. Even though we were divorced, everything should go to Naomi as the legal heir. I understood and accepted her position. Throughout all this time, Jack never once called or asked about his mother's health. I wouldn't have minded if he had wanted to visit her, but he seemed indifferent. Once, my ex-mother-in-law had breathing problems, and I rushed her to the hospital. I was very scared for her life. While my dad looked after Naomi, my mom and I spent the whole night at the hospital praying for her recovery. Thankfully, she was discharged home. After that, I didn't want her to die without reconciling with her son. So, I called Jack, putting aside all grievances and begged him to come to his mother. I told him the doctors gave a grim prognosis and I feared she might pass any moment. Instead of sympathy, Jack argued that his mother never accepted Susan. I begged him to put pride aside for his mother's sake, but he said his schedule was too tight, and he couldn't make time. It was hard to hear this, considering his mother's condition, but I insisted he find some time. Eventually, he reluctantly agreed to a short visit. When Jack finally arrived, I was shocked because he brought Susan along. I kept quiet, I wasn't happy to see her in my home, but for my ex-mother-in-law's sake, I said nothing. The tension between Jack and his mother was obvious. The conversation was awkward with long pauses. He never tried to have a sincere talk with her. It seemed he came out of politeness rather than to fix things. It was sad to see, but at least he fulfilled my request and came. When my ex-mother-in-law saw Jack had brought Susan and their child, she resisted, but I calmed her, saying I didn't mind as long as they supported her. My ex-mother-in-law was very weak, bedridden, and barely able to move, so she just had to accept the situation. I kept my word and stayed silent, even when Susan began to behave arrogantly toward my ex-mother-in-law. When my ex-mother-in-law said she didn't want to see Darren, Susan reminded her that he was her grandson too. I left the room to give them privacy and to check on my daughter, who was very sad to see her father ignoring her. From the kitchen, I noticed Susan went outside and was making a call through an open window. I heard her laughing and complaining that she was forced to visit Jack's mother. Then she said Jack assured her the mother would leave everything to him and that they were only visiting out of courtesy one last time. Susan happily shared plans to soon move into the house and remodel it to their liking, saying the interior was already outdated. Moreover, Susan said she would remove all pictures of me and my daughter once the house became theirs. I froze hearing these cruel words. Susan went on to say how she would change the furniture, repaint the walls, and remodel the house. She dismissed my ex-mother-in-law's illness and last days, but I decided to stay silent so as not to upset her unnecessarily. Besides, Jack was sure his mother hadn't changed the will and everything would go to him and his new child. I didn't think it was necessary to explain to him. If he couldn't even bother to remember his daughter Naomi, let him face the consequences of his indifference. Jack and Susan never learned the truth about the will. I felt bitter because I knew my ex-mother-in-law might not have much time left and that she consciously decided to leave everything to me and my granddaughter. My ex-mother-in-law often said she did it specifically to punish her son and his mistress for their actions. Her own childhood was broken by her father's betrayal, and she couldn't bear to watch her son destroy his daughter's life too. She wanted Naomi to feel loved even after her grandmother was gone. Soon, my ex-mother-in-law's condition suddenly worsened, and she passed away last week. I organized the funeral myself because neither relatives nor Jack and his wife offered help. I wanted to give her a dignified farewell. My parents helped me choose a beautiful coffin and a place for the ceremony. Susan didn't even attend the funeral. Some relatives came, but it was obvious they didn't care much. Later, the lawyer called me and read the will. I couldn't hold back tears. Everything was exactly as my ex-mother-in-law said. The house, money, and family heirloom went to me and Naomi. I felt grief over losing someone important and gratitude that now I could secure my daughter's future. While trying to sort out paperwork and my emotions, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, Susan, Jack, Darren, and several relatives stood there. They all looked gloomy and angry. Jack demanded to know why everything went to me. The house, money, and heirloom were my mother's, and suddenly it's all yours, he yelled, clearly furious. I tried to stay calm and said my ex-mother-in-law thought it through and made her own decision. Jack accused me of brainwashing his mother while she was ill, but I pointed out the dates and times the will was signed. Everything was done well before her condition worsened. Susan also jumped in angrily, asking why me and my daughter got everything, not her and her son, since they were family too. I couldn't hold back and told them everything I heard Susan say on the phone outside about their last visit to my ex-mother-in-law and plans to throw away all our photos and redecorate the house. Susan's eyes widened. She denied everything and tried to paint me as a liar who wanted to tear the family apart. But I reminded them that it was she and Jack who destroyed the family when they started dating. Then Jack's relatives present started making claims that, as blood relatives, they also deserved a share of the inheritance. They demanded I sell the house and divide the money 8 ways. I was shocked by their audacity and coldness. I said only I cared for my ex-mother-in-law until the end and none of them even called or visited her. So they had no right to demand anything. They started loudly arguing about how unfair it was. Jack was outraged, saying it was his childhood home and he wanted to live there with Susan and their son. He threatened to sue me and contest the will if I didn't give him the house. I laughed in his face and reminded him he never cared for his mother and only showed up when I begged him. I told him he could try to sue all he wanted, but the lawyer assured me the will was flawless and he had no chance. Jack was clearly stunned by my calmness. Susan suddenly begged me to think of Darren's well-being, saying he deserved a good life just like Naomi. She cried saying the child needed a good life but remembered that Jack never cared about his daughter's well-being. Why should I give them anything if my ex-mother-in-law wanted to leave everything to us? I asked everyone to leave and told them to discuss questions with the lawyer. It was clear to me legally they could do nothing, otherwise, they wouldn't have come with such demands. I closed the door feeling satisfied that I stood up for myself and fulfilled my ex-mother-in-law's wishes. Since then, Jack keeps calling and texting me, expressing his hatred. He insists if I had even a shred of decency, I would return what rightfully belongs to his family, not me and Naomi. He accuses me of greed and constantly demands everything back. But I remain unshaken and glad I defended what my ex-mother-in-law left us. Update 1. I thought this story would only interest a few people, but it seems to have resonated widely. Thanks to everyone who listened and gave advice. To those angry at me for not asking my ex-mother-in-law to include Jack and Susan's new child in the will, I'll say again, I tried, but it was her decision, and I can't change it now. Yes, you may call me selfish, but I won't share the inheritance. I will prioritize myself and my daughter. Of course, I'm angry at Jack and Susan. They broke my heart, and their affair caused my miscarriage. When I was depressed, Jack abandoned me for Susan instead of supporting me. My ex-mother-in-law herself chose not to include the child from their affair or Susan in the will. She had plenty of time to change it if she wanted and didn't. Yes, I feel sorry for their child, but that's not my responsibility. Besides, my ex-mother-in-law left Jack his father's painting collection. He can make thousands from it, so they clearly have enough to live on. Those judging me now probably wouldn't behave nobly in a similar situation. I firmly intend not to give in to Jack. Remember, Naomi is also Jack's daughter, but he only seems to care about Susan's son and has never shown interest in Naomi. Why does he expect to get anything from us after all the harm he caused? Update 2. The situation with Jack and Susan remains tense. They keep demanding and accusing me, poisoning my life. Yesterday, Susan suddenly called me. I didn't even know it was her number. From the first second, she started yelling, accusing me of greed and stealing what belongs to them. She said she was glad Jack left me after the miscarriage because I didn't deserve to be his wife. I was busy at work and didn't understand what was happening at first. I calmly tried to explain that it was my ex-mother-in-law's will, not my decision. But Susan wouldn't stop, calling me a liar and thief. I reminded her she never had a good relationship with my ex-mother-in-law while she was alive, so why claim the inheritance now? Then Susan crossed the line, threatening me and my child, saying if I didn't give Jack his share, she would find a way to reach my daughter and tell her the truth about me. This was unacceptable. I immediately told her that if she got near my child, I would go to the police. I reminded her I have all her threatening messages and could easily get a restraining order. I warned I could also inform her employer about her behavior during work hours. That seemed to sober her up. I hung up and immediately called Jack to tell him what Susan said. He apologized for her and said he didn't know she threatened my daughter. I cut him off and told him I owed him nothing and planned to keep everything his mother left me legally. I warned him that if he or Susan tried to contact me or my child again, I would file a police report. Since then, my phone has been silent. If Susan or Jack dare threaten me again, I'm ready to follow through on my promises. Update 3. It's been 2 months since the last update. I keep getting many requests about how I'm doing. My daughter and I have already moved into my ex-mother-in-law's house. I often catch myself wishing she were still alive. I miss her everywhere, in every room where we laughed, in the yard where she loved spending evenings, and in the kitchen where we had endless talks. Her presence seems to linger in every corner of the house, filled with her warmth. Every day, I experience mixed feelings, gratitude that Naomi's future is now secured and bitterness over losing someone so important. I try to find comfort in the thought that the place where my ex-mother-in-law lived and was happy will become a real home for Naomi. At this moment, I almost feel her spirit nearby. I want to cherish everything she left us with respect and love for her memory. So please, write in the comments what you think about this whole story. What I liked most was the thought someone expressed, if faced with the same situation, they would probably do exactly the same. Yes, alas, money and inheritance intoxicate most people. But I have no complaints about the author here, she truly cared for her mother-in-law. So that's all. Thanks for watching this video till the end. Check out our previous videos, which you can find here. Good luck!